say that I am truly impressed with how passionate and how knowledgeable he is of Taiwan and politics, and even technology. As a side note, many of you may not know, one thing you may not know about Steve is that he has always had an affinity toward technology. In fact, he enjoyed building computers as a kid. And so for me being an engineer, that's something that I found very interesting. I know I speak on behalf of all participants here when I say that we appreciate very much this opportunity to spend some time with you, Steve, to hear your views about some of the issues we Taiwanese Americans are concerned about. Steve served in the White House as Deputy Assistant for National Security Affairs to Vice President Cheney from 2001 through 2005. He was deeply involved in the development and execution of U.S. foreign policy priorities in Asia and provided direct support to Vice President Cheney. Since 2006, he has been the president of the DC International Advisory, which is an international consultant group. He served as a senior campaign advisor and director of national security staff for Newt Gingrich's 2012 campaign, and before that was senior Asia advisor for the Rudy Giuliani Presidential Committee during his 2008 campaign. Steve is also a regular contributor to Fox TV and radio. In fact, he will be doing an interview with them later this afternoon at 2 o'clock, so if you want to speak with him, make sure you talk with him before 2 o'clock. Most of you already know him, though, in the mid-90s when he was senior policy analyst at the Heritage Foundation. Steve received a master's degree in China Studies from the Johns Hopkins University Paul H. Nish School of Advanced International Studies, so he is more than able to do his whole entire presentation in Mandarin, and I'm not kidding. He can actually read Mandarin upside down and backwards, as he showed me and my brother a couple days ago at dinner. Steve lives in Idaho today with his wife and kids, so without further ado, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Mr. Steve Yates.
各位爱台湾的朋友，大家好。It is a great honor to be here. I thank many of you, good friends, for over many, many years, for inviting me to share some time with you and to share a few thoughts about Taiwan, the United States, and the future that we face together. Taiwan has been a very important part of my life. I began a journey in my teenage years that went to college thinking that I was going to be a computer science and mathematics major, and as my grandfather said at the time, you throw your life away studying politics and culture and language. He was very, very upset with me. I was the oldest of 37 grandchildren. He wanted me to be successful and be able to help lead the family, and I was deeply disappointed that I wasn't going to be a doctor, I wasn't going to be an engineer, and instead I was throwing my life away to study these things. And so after that, I volunteered for 2 years to be a missionary, and I was sent to southern Taiwan. And as I say, this journey is a personal one, it is an intellectual one, it is also one that I think is very important to who we are as Americans, the challenges that we face, and whether we are going to be serious about taking over these challenges, or whether we will be weak and allow these challenges to take over us. And I think that is fundamentally the choice. I apologize for not wearing a suit, but I am deeply disappointed that a Taiwanese entrepreneur has not created an alternative to the Western suit. Because I think that the Western suit, especially in hot temperatures, is a form of torture. And so I hope that some enterprising clothier will design an attractive and popular alternative to the Western suit. Then I would be able to show the respect that I feel in my heart for being together with you. Now, I've chosen a little bit of a complicated topic, and so I apologize for that. But I think that you in the room who have watched the movie that we shared last night and have lived the lives you had, knowing the struggle for freedom in Taiwan, which is, in my view, not just a Taiwanese story. It is a human struggle for freedom against those who would take it from you. But unlike you, too many people in today's society don't understand that freedom can be taken away. Freedom can be taken away by governments that other democracies say are their friends. This is a form of betrayal that not everyone experiences firsthand. And it's very difficult for those who have not experienced it to accept that it is true. You may have had the experience I have, that when you try to talk to people about this struggle for freedom, about injustice, about systems that need to be changed, people look at you and think you are crazy. Well, yes, I am crazy, because this makes me angry. And I feel like something must be done. Injustice cannot stand if we work together to push back against it. But it will not be easy, it will not be fast, as our president is famous for saying, as an excuse for everything. But this, I believe, fundamentally comes down to a war. This is a provocative thing to say. I did work for Vice President Cheney, and I thought one of the things he was most skilled at was saying things that at times could be quite shocking, but to do it in a very calm and thoughtful way so that you felt like it's all right. Of course this is the right thing to do. It's the right way to think. But for the people of Taiwan, the people who support freedom, independence, self-determination, for the people of Taiwan, but not just the people of Taiwan, the people of China, the people of other oppressed societies around the world. For people who believe in these things, a war has been declared on us. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, when it comes to Taiwan, the beginning is very, very simple. It's not really the beginning because, as the movie showed last night, much of the narrative occurred before the Nixon administration. But the war that has been declared on Taiwan as we know it, really in American policy, begins in the Nixon administration with the establishment of the opening to China, the establishment of what became known as the One China policy, and basically in Republican and Democrat administrations ever since, the perpetuation of what I consider to be lies, distortions, and what I consider to be the most effective political warfare against ordinary Americans. What is this? There is no stronger evidence of successful political warfare than making someone speak in their native language and make no sense at all. And they do it to the most powerful Americans. So, what do I mean? One China. What is one China? What does this mean? It isn't English. There is no American that wonders how many Chinas are there. No one's asking this question. And so instead, the People's Republic of China and some of its allies in the Republic of China are perpetuating a notion in English that makes no sense in English. And yet, they're able to get the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America to repeat it over and over and over for 40 years. There's no greater evidence of successful political warfare and control than to force an allegedly intelligent, educated, and successful American to speak in his own native language and speak nonsense. And we see it all the time on China policy. This angers me. But what angers me more is the institutional support that perpetuates this. And that's what I want to talk about. When I talk about establishment elites, I am talking not about the President of the United States. I am talking about a group of people, most of whom are not elected, most of whom are not accountable, most of whom you don't know who funds them, most of whom aren't necessarily even qualified to speak on the topics they address, but they as individuals and organizations perpetuate this butchering of the English language on American policy towards China. And the consequence is trying to end Taiwan as we know it. These are extreme statements, but I hope that you understand why I speak in these stark terms, because I honestly believe that they have been successful for most of the last 4 decades. In the time that diplomatic relations were normalized at the end of the Carter administration, there was still a large body in Washington that questioned, even opposed, the idea of normalizing relations with Beijing. Today, we have a substantial caucus in the Congress, but we have no power to change where the establishment is driving policy towards China and the downgrading to the point of elimination of recognition of Taiwan's democracy. So, if you look at candidate Ronald Reagan in 1979 saying that he would reestablish relations with Taiwan, you can forget for the moment that he didn't. But the fact of the matter was, in 1979, there was enough power in the American political system that a presidential candidate found it morally correct, but also politically advisable to take that public position. He was beaten back from the idea by this establishment once he was in office. In 2012, we do not have enough political power in the United States for a presidential candidate to think it morally correct and politically advisable to say that we should recognize Taipei as the capital of the Republic of Taiwan. This is the goal that many of you share, as I understand it. And so I don't stand before you today in a chapel and bear witness that this can't happen. I stand before you today as someone who sees that vision of the future too. But I want to talk about what we need to do in this generation and over the next generation to rebuild a sense of political power in the United States, and also to use more effectively some of the tools of political warfare that have been used against us, instead against the enemies of freedom. So that is essentially the theme that I would like to develop in some greater detail. There are a few things that have happened over the last year that are, I think, helpful points of context. First, there were elections in Taiwan. I trust many of you watched them very, very closely. Some of you, maybe most of you, even watched them from Taiwan. One of the things that I have come to know and appreciate from Taiwanese American groups around the country is that not only do you care about Taiwan and Taiwanese American issues here, but many of you will go back to Taiwan and help mobilize support for the campaigns and causes you care about. This is a financial sacrifice, this is a time sacrifice, but it's also an investment in the ongoing history of Taiwan that